Hello, this is Robert, and in this video I would like to show you how to create a new project in Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio Community 2015, but if you have 2017 or even a previous version such as 2013, they all work the same way. So I'm going to click on New Project, and then I'm going to make sure that I have Visual C++ selected, and then General. There are other languages that come with Visual Studio, but we won't be using any of those. All of the projects will be written in C++. So you may have to open up the Visual C++ drop-down menu to see General right there. After you've selected General, make sure you've selected Empty Project. And then down here we can see the default project name that Visual Studio gave our project. And then we can see the default location right here as well. The default location is Documents, Visual Studio, and then Projects. You can change this by clicking the Browse button, and then you can store your project anywhere you want, such as a flash drive. You can also change the default name. So if you'd like to rename your project to something else, you can type a new name in that text box right there. Okay, I'm going to click OK, and then Visual Studio is creating our new project. This is an empty project, and so the first thing I need to do is to add a source code file so that I can start writing C++ code. I can add a file either by going to the File menu and selecting New and then File. And then I would want to make sure and select a Visual C++ file. And notice there that it has the extension .cpp. There's another easier way to add source code files though, and that is right-clicking on the Source Files folder in the Solution Explorer, then mouse over Add, and then click on New Item. As I said before, I want to make sure I have a C++ file, and source.cpp is fine for the default name, and this is the project's directory that Visual Studio created when it created the project. Notice that the project directory is project1, and then there's a working directory of the same name inside the project directory. So project1 is where source.cpp will be stored on the hard drive. Okay, I'm just going to click Add, and now I have a source code file that's opened up by the editor. So here's my new source code file, and I can type in the editor to add code here. Notice also that I can mouse over the title of the window, and I can see where the source code file is stored. Okay, C++ does not include input and output functionality right off the bat. That's in order to keep the language as compact as possible. So in order to interact with the screen, we need to do what's called loading a library. So I'm going to type the pound key, which is Shift 3, and then I'm going to type include. And then I'm going to type an angled bracket, a left angled bracket, and the library that I would like to include is called IOStream. This library allows us to do input and output. Input from the keyboard and output to the screen. Okay, along with this, we need to type using namespace standard, std, and then I type a semicolon. These two statements go together. This is sort of like loading a toolbox so that we can have access to some tools, and then this is sort of like letting C++ know where to find the names of the tools. So this is the standard namespace, and it includes names like cout and cin so that we can take input from the keyboard and send output to the screen. Every C++ program has to have a main function. And the main function will return an integer. So I'm going to type int right there, and then I'm going to type main, and then a couple of parentheses. When the operating system starts up our program, and when our program runs and is terminated, the main function will return a number to indicate whether or not everything went well. That's why main returns an integer right there. It'll return an integer back to the operating system that will signal success or failure of our program. Okay, now I'm going to type an open curly brace, and then Visual Studio created the closing curly brace automatically for me. Then I'm going to type return, and inside of the curly braces is where all of the source code will go that will be part of our program. Let's just create the traditional Hello World program. And to do that in C++, I just type cout, and then I'm going to type a literal string by using double quotes on the outside, hello world. And Visual Studio automatically created the double quotes for me, the closing double quote. And then I'm going to type a semicolon right there. All C++ statements end with a semicolon. Okay, and then if I want to terminate my program normally, at the end of the main function, I type return 0. And by returning 0 from main, that signals the operating system that our program ran correctly. There's one extra step that I have to do with a Visual Studio program, and that is I have to ask the system to keep the terminal window open after the program is done so that I can see the output. So I have to add one more statement in between these two statements, and that statement is system pause. Okay, without this statement right here, this system call, the terminal window would open and it would print hello world, and then it would close, and it would happen so fast that we would hardly be able to see it. So this system call right here keeps the terminal window open for us. Okay, now that I have written my program, I need to convert it into a form, or Visual Studio needs to convert it into a form that can be executed on the computer. And that's called compiling or building. So I can build my project by clicking build and then build solution. If everything goes well, then the output window down here will show me that it was successfully built. Okay, I can see that it says build 1 succeeded. That means that I now have an executable version of my program that I can run. To run it, I can select debug and then start debugging, and the shortcut right there is F5. Visual Studio will start up the program in a separate console window, and I can see the output of my program right there. So I can see that it said hello world, and then it says press any key to continue. The hello world part was from the cout statement, so hello world was from here. By the way, cout stands for common output, and the common output is to the screen. Notice that it was all on one line though, and so if I would like hello world to be on one line and then press any key to continue, if I would like that to be on the next line down, I need to have a new line character or an end line. Let's go ahead and add an end line to our hello world string. Okay, this is called a literal string if it is enclosed in double quotes. Okay, so I'm going to add a couple more insertion marks and then end L. And that is an L right there, not a 1. So don't accidentally type a 1. Make sure it's an L. That stands for end line. And so after hello world is printed to the screen, end line will then be printed to the screen, and so then any further output will be on the next line down. Okay, so before we selected build and then we selected debug. We can combine those two operations. We can build it and run it all together simply by clicking the local Windows debugger button right here, and that's the green triangle. So if I click that, it will be built and run all at the same time. So let's click that button. So yes, I do want to build it. And so the terminal window is opened up, and you can see now that we have Hello World on one line, and then press any key to continue on the next line down. Okay, so that's about it for creating a brand new project in Visual Studio. If you would like to locate your source code file in order to upload it as part of your homework, you can open up the Documents folder in Windows Explorer and find it that way, but there is a much faster way to go directly to the working directory of your project, and all you have to do is mouse over your source code file, right click on it, and then select Open Containing Folder, and then we can see that we have source.cpp right there. This is all I need to be uploaded as part of your homework assignment. I just need the source code file. If your version of Windows does not show you the extension, the .cpp part, you can right click on it and go down to Properties to make sure that it is a C++ source file or a .cpp file. Okay, thanks.